Nearly 2 billion people will watch the 2026 FIFA World Cup final. It's the single biggest event on Earth, and it's run by what may be the most corrupt organisation on Earth. This is the rise and fall of FIFA. Zurich, Switzerland. At approximately 5:30 a.m. on the 27th of May 2015, agents simultaneously knock on multiple hotel room doors inside a five-star hotel. Moments later, the men are marched through the lobby, law enforcement holding up bedsheets to hide their identities. The most powerful men in football walked out one by one, all arrested for taking bribes not measured in the thousands but in the hundreds of millions of dollars. A body that takes in billions, paid almost no taxes, and decides who hosts the World Cup, and prosecutors say they sold those decisions to the highest bidder for decades. So, how did the game's guardian become a criminal enterprise? And the real question, with the whole world watching, is FIFA fixed or still rotten to the core? Thanks for clicking on the video, I'm Richie. On this channel, we break down influential people, businesses, and much more, so you and I can take away the good and skip the bad in our own lives. Right, back to Zurich. Now, most people think the story starts with those arrests in 2015, but it doesn't. Prosecutors called it 2 generations of corruption, rot that went back decades, long before anyone got arrested. And stick around to the end, because the most uncomfortable part to this story isn't those arrests. It's around the cleanup that happened after. The new boss came in promising to fix everything, and what's gone on since then might be even harder to swallow. We'll get to that. FIFA was born in 1904. A handful of European nations who just wanted to organise friendly international football matches. A tiny non-profit registered as a social club in Switzerland, the same legal status as a local hiking or hunting club. And unbelievably, that's still how it's classified today. And for the first 70 years, it was basically a sleepy gentleman's club running a sport, often nearly broke. The very first World Cup was held in 1930 in Uruguay. And it was such a long, expensive trip that barely any European teams would even go. In the end, only 4 made the journey, and 3 of them travelled all the way to South America on the same steamship. A boat called the Conte Verde, sailing right alongside FIFA's own president and the World Cup trophy itself. And with nowhere else to prepare, the players just trained on the deck as it made the crossing. Running laps around the deck, doing their stretches in between lifeboats. One man on that boat, a Frenchman, scored the very first goal in World Cup history. And that's where this all began. Just a few teams chasing a trophy that nobody had ever won just for the love of the game. And hold that picture, because it's about as far as what FIFA became than you could possibly imagine. And from that moment on, the World Cup became a fixture. Every 4 years, growing bigger each time. More nations, more fans, more of the world tuning in. Decade after decade, it swelled into the biggest sport this earth has ever seen. For a while, it was just a beautiful, growing game. And then the 70s came, and everything changed. In 1974, a Brazilian named João Havelange runs for the FIFA presidency against the old European guard. And he wins by campaigning across Africa and Asia, promising the smaller footballing nations money, tournaments, and a real seat at the table. He becomes the first non-European ever to run the World Football Federation. One problem, he made enormous promises, and at this point, FIFA was still broke. So he turns to this man, Horst Dassler, the boss of Adidas, and basically the inventor of modern sports sponsorship. Dassler looks at the World Cup and sees what nobody else has fully cashed in on, the biggest audience on earth, just sitting there, unsold. So together, they go hunting for corporate money. And it takes 18 months of hard selling, but they finally do it. They get the big one, Coca-Cola. The first worldwide sponsorship of any sport in history. Then McDonald's, then the rest. And the money just starts pouring in. But Dassler, he was playing a much deeper game. He didn't just sell shoes or sponsorships. He cultivated the officials, the men who controlled the votes and all the rules. He'd put loyalists on the payroll with cushy fake titles like consultant. And one of the ambitious young men he took under his wing was a Swiss marketer named Sepp Blatter. And in 1982, Dassler set up a marketing company called ISL, and FIFA handed them all the rights for the World Cup. No open bidding, no competition, just a deal between some mates. And ISL sells the sponsorships and the TV rights to the entire planet. And, of course, the money doesn't just grow, it explodes. And here's where the sport quietly becomes an empire. FIFA's fortune flowed back out to the national federations around the world. Some into genuine development for the game, but a lot of it into the pockets of the very people who kept Halverlinge in power. He built the perfect machine, money in, loyalty out, and nobody able to touch him. He ran FIFA like an emperor for 24 years, expanding the sport, growing the World Cup, all while benefiting his friends. And in 1982, he handed his crown down to his hand-picked successor. And that name, Sepp Blatter, elected amid immediate whispers of bribery. And when you've got that much money and that little oversight, you've got a big problem. And I learnt this one running my own business. If there's only one person handling the money, there's nobody looking over the books. I don't care how good your intentions are. Temptation will always win. For years, all of this was just whispers. Everyone in football could sense the money was moving in strange ways, but nobody could prove it. Then, in 2001, the machine cracked open. ISL, that marketing company Dazzler built, had been overpaying wildly for the rights, and it collapsed into bankruptcy. And when investigators went through the wreckage, they found the truth. Between 1989 and 2001, ISL had secretly paid around 185 million Swiss francs and calling them commissions to top football officials. That's not a commission. In plain English, that's bribery. All for keeping those golden World Cup rights flowing to the right hands. And it went all the way to the throne. Years later, a Swiss court found that Halverlinge himself and his son-in-law had taken millions in these payments. The emperor had his hand in the till the whole time. Sepp Blatter, he has always denied his wrongdoing over ISL, and he was never criminally convicted for it. But the warning lights were flashing red for years before the world started watching, and the money was moving in the dark, and nobody had the power to stop it, or wanted to, because everyone at the top was now eating. Here's a moment that shows you exactly how FIFA really worked behind the curtains. 2011, a billionaire football official is challenging Sepp Blatter for the presidency, and he needs the votes from the Caribbean. So a meeting's called in Trinidad. The officials file into a room, and the way investigators later described it, each man finds a brown envelope waiting for him. Inside, $40,000 cash, one envelope per man, allegedly flown in on a private jet, a slush fund to buy a presidency. And the man that handed out those envelopes? Jack Warner, one of the most powerful officials in the sport. And this wasn't some rogue exception. This was the culture. This was how FIFA played. Votes for World Cups, votes for presidents. A lot of these men, it was all just merchandise. That envelope room is the whole story of old FIFA. One image. And it ran right up to the crown jewel, the vote that everyone still argues about. In 2010, FIFA awarded 2 World Cups at once. Russia got 2018, and tiny Qatar, a desert nation where summer hits 50 degrees with minimal football history and no modern stadiums, they beat out the United States to host the 2022 Games. Now officially, Qatar won the bid fair and square, and they've always denied any wrongdoing or any misconduct. But the decision triggered years of investigation, a report FIFA refused to release in full, and a permanent cloud of suspicion. Did the best bet win or the richest favour? I'll lay out what's documented, and you can make up your own mind and tell me in the comments. Because honestly, the world still hasn't agreed on this one. So how do you take down an organisation this powerful, headquartered in Switzerland, full of men with diplomatic protection? You need someone on the inside. And FIFA's downfall came from the unlikeliest man imaginable. His name was Chuck Blazer, a giant, larger-than-life American official with a famous white beard, who lived in Trump Tower in New York City. He spent years skimming a fortune off football all for himself. And guess what? Here's what got him in. Apparently, he forgot to pay his taxes. The FBI and IRS came after him and gave him a choice: prison or wear a wire. So, Chuck Blazer, he turned. He walked through football's back rooms with a recording device reportedly hidden in a keychain, gathering evidence on everyone. The man who helped build the corruption became the man who blew it wide open. So this is how the FBI eventually took down the most corrupt organisation in sport. May 27th, 2015, days before FIFA's big annual meeting. The bosses are all staying at a 5-star hotel in Zurich. At dawn, Swiss police move in. And to protect the officials' identities, they're let out, police holding up white bed sheets in the lobby and straight out onto the street. 7 arrested that morning. In total, the US charged dozens of officials and executives, over $150 million in bribes and schemes going back to 1991. 2 generations of theft. The empire that ran the world's game taken down before breakfast. All by an American tax investigation into the man that apparently forgot to file taxes. 4 days later, Sepp Blatter was up for re-election, and he won it. The football world couldn't believe it, but the walls were closing in, and within days, he would announce he's stepping down. Within months, FIFA's own ethics committee banned him from football for years. Alongside European football's golden boy, Michael Platini, the pair were brought down by a suspicious $2 million payment. Now, here's where you've got to be fair, because the courts were. Years later, a Swiss court actually acquitted Blatter and Platini of the criminal fraud charges in that case. Banned by football, but not criminally convicted. Both have always insisted they did nothing illegal. The empire fell, but the law and the headlines didn't always land in the same place. So, it's 2016, FIFA is on its knees, disgraced in front of the whole world and desperate to prove that it's changed. And in walks the reformer, Gianni Infantino. He promises transparency, term limits, a clean, modern FIFA, the grown-up coming in to fix the mess. And I'll give him this, financially, FIFA has never been richer. New tournaments, more teams, and more money than ever pouring in. On the balance sheet, it's booming. But here's the uncomfortable part, the part I teased at the beginning. A lot of people that watch FIFA closely say it isn't cleaned up. It's just quieter. FIFA got caught in the biggest corruption scandal in sports history. So, did they fix it or just get better at it? Here's what's happened since the cleanup. The 2034 World Cup was handed to Saudi Arabia, essentially unopposed, in a rushed process critics called a stitch-up. The reform president started showing up constantly alongside the world's most powerful political leaders. Tickets for the World Cup final hit thousands of dollars a seat, pricing out the very fans the game belongs to. And the man who promised term limits, he's still there, more powerful than ever. No bed sheets this time, no handcuffs, but a lot of people argue the same disease is just in a nicer suit. Remember, the loudest corruption gets arrested, the smartest gets legalised. And I want to be straight with you, because this is the part of the story I could just point and scream. Infantino has not been charged with the kind of crimes the 2015 men were. Running expensive tournaments and shaking powerful hands is not the same as cash in a brown envelope. His defenders say he saved FIFA. He grew the game and uprighted a sinking ship. But his critics, and there are many serious ones, say something sharper. That the real scandal was never just a few bad men. It was a system with no real check on the man at the top. And if you don't fix the system, you don't fix the problem. All you're doing is changing the hand that's on the tap. So, which is it? Reformer or just a smooth operator? This one is genuinely for the comments. I know where I lean, I want to know where you are. Here's the thing. You may be sitting here going, hang on, barely anyone went to prison and the new boss got cleared. It's richer than ever, the stadiums are full, the final's about to be the biggest ever. So what fall? Where's the actual fall? Fair question. So let's not look at the past, let's look at the World Cup that's happening right now. Because the receipt for what FIFA has become is printing in real time. And America finally got its World Cup back, though it had to share it with Canada and Mexico, the first time 3 countries have ever co-hosted. 48 teams, 104 matches, the biggest tournament in World Cup history. And, on the surface, it's a roaring success. FIFA's president stood up and called ticket sales unprecedented. Over 6 million sold, more than any World Cup ever. And it's been such a moneymaker that FIFA, in effect, has already lined up its next American payday. And how they did it should tell you everything. FIFA has a rule called the rotation policy. Whichever region hosts the World Cup has to sit out the next 2 tournaments. On paper, it's perfect. It's meant to spread the tournament around the world fairly and evenly. But watch how the board actually gets set. The 2030 World Cup is being hosted by Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, and with a handful of opening matches being played in Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay. Then, 2034 goes to Saudi Arabia. So, run the clock forward to 2038. Europe, locked out. Africa, locked out. South America, locked out. Asia, locked out. All of them barred by FIFA's own fairness rule, which leaves 2 regions in the world to host the World Cup. Oceania, which is Australia, New Zealand, or North America again. And which one is basically built to host the World Cup games? The USA. It's already sitting there with the airports ready to move millions of fans, the giant NFL football stadiums bigger than anything else on earth, the sponsors, the television rights, the money, and the public so used to sky-high ticket prices they'll pay anything without even blinking. So the USA are already openly positioning themselves to host again in 2038. That's just over a decade after this one. And critics say FIFA didn't stumble upon that. They say FIFA arranged the whole board, using the fairness rule as cover to march the tournament and its record-shattering billions straight back to the richest market on earth. FIFA calls it a rotation, you might call it something else. But digging beyond the surface, most people are already calling this tournament an absolute shakedown. Because here's what fans were actually promised when the bid was won. A seat at the final for around $1,500 and tickets starting at nearly $60. Sounds fair? Well, what we got was something very different. For the 2026 World Cup, tickets were priced like airlines, dynamic pricing. So the price isn't fixed, it moves with demand, second by second. The more people want in, the higher it climbs. So that $60 promise, by the time fans were actually buying tickets, the cheapest seats to some games ran in the thousands of dollars, and face value for the final reportedly passed $5,000 to $6,000. And people put these things on credit cards, going into debt just to be in the room. But here's the jaw dropper. FIFA also runs the official resale site, the only sanctioned place to flip your ticket. And it takes a cut from the buyer and the seller every time. So FIFA sells you the ticket, then they run the store where you could resell it while also getting paid a second and third time on the way out the door. They're not fighting the scalpers anymore, they became the scalpers. And it gets much murkier. Partway through, reports surfaced that tens of thousands of tickets suddenly vanished off FIFA's main sales site, and a near identical number of tickets popped up on its own resale marketplace, and most of the time at different prices. So fans started asking the obvious, uncomfortable question, who's actually selling all these tickets? When the same organisation controls the first sale, then the resale, and all the numbers in between, who's checking that the seller isn't FIFA itself? And now, to be fair, FIFA has an answer for all of this, surely. They say dynamic pricing just reflects real demand and that an official resale site protects fans from the black market scalpers, and that as a non-profit, all the money goes right back into growing football around the world. And some economists back them up. That's a real argument, so I'll let you weigh it. But to me, it rhymes with something. An organisation with total control of the market, no real competitor, and nobody independent watching the money. Where have we all heard that before? And look, if the company that's selling all the tickets, then being the reseller, taking money from the seller and the buyer again, not sharing all the information on the numbers, doing dodgy stuff, if that makes your skin crawl, you're not alone. Me too. That exact playbook is its own scandal, and it's one we're going to be breaking down on this channel very soon, when we do the rise and fall of the ticketing giants like Ticketek and Ticketmaster. So strip away all the corruption and scandals, and FIFA has left us 4 hard lessons, and they're not necessarily about football. 1. Money plus power minus oversight equals corruption. Every single time. It's almost law of nature. 2. The people inside almost never stop it. FIFA didn't clean itself, it took outsiders, the FBI, the IRS, the tax case, to crack it wide open. because everyone on the inside was eating from the same table. 3. Getting caught is not the same as getting fixed. Arrest the loudest offenders, change the nameplate, and if the system underneath stays the same, what have you changed? The cast, not the play. 4. Follow the money, not the badge. The title said, Guardian of the Beautiful Game. The money said something very different. When what someone does and what someone says stop matching, believe the money. So, is FIFA fixed or still rotten to the core? Maybe the honest answer is the most unsettling one, because the men in handcuffs were just amateurs. The fall of FIFA was never about a few crooks just getting caught. It's that the whole machine learned to do it out in the open, and we keep paying for it anyway. Because billions of us will still watch the World Cup final, and it will be glorious, because the game is beautiful, it always has been, it's pure. It's the men in the suits that weren't. And 2 questions I'd love to hear where you land. 1, did Qatar really earn the 2022 World Cup, or was it bought? And is FIFA actually cleaned up today or still corrupt? Make your case below in the comments, I'll be reading. And if you like this video, subscribe. Enjoy the final. I'm Richie.